When I turned the key that cold November afternoon, I found a yellow paper stuck to my door. Eviction notice, stamped by Multnomah County. I read the lines with blurred vision, my heart pounding so loud it sounded like an alarm. But what broke me wasn't the word eviction. It was the signature at the bottom. Olivia Bennett, my daughter. The same girl I rocked to sleep through endless nights and double shifts at the corner grocery store. The same girl I drove to school in my old Subaru with a simple lunch and a "Mom loves you" note tucked inside her backpack. I froze. The Portland wind cut across my face as dead leaves spun around the porch. The house wasn't big, but it was our world. The worn-out couch where we watched Thursday night sitcoms, the kitchen table marked with coffee cups and conversations I thought would last forever. The notice said I had 72 hours. 72 hours to leave the place I built brick by brick, choice by choice. My body gave out. I wanted to scream, but what came was silence. The heavy kind that only appears when love turns into a knife. I stepped inside, shut the door, and leaned my forehead against the wood. I had to understand. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and opened Olivia's old messages. Lately, she'd been distant, short replies, busy at work, long hours at the law firm where she was just an assistant. I never suspected anything. We never do, not when it's someone we love. Every Sunday I made chili and left her a container in the fridge, thinking that was enough to keep our bond alive. Maybe that bond had been fraying for a long time, and I just refused to see it. In the kitchen, the clock above the stove read 4:17. The coffee maker still smelled like morning. I stared out the window, the gray sky, the white fence, the neighbor jogging with her Labrador. Everything looked the same. And yet, everything felt foreign. I opened a drawer and pulled out a blue folder with important papers: mortgage, utility bills, home insurance. There was a brown envelope I didn't remember seeing before, with my name written in handwriting that wasn't mine. I opened it. Inside was a copy of the house deed and an amendment. A partial transfer of ownership dated 2 months ago, bearing my signature. Except, I never signed it. My stomach dropped. I flipped through the pages. The amendment was notarized downtown, on the same street where Olivia's firm is located. My name looked shaky, as if someone had mimicked my trembling hand. A chill ran through me. I threw on my coat, shoved the envelope into my bag, and rushed out. The cold air slapped my face awake. I started the car with stiff fingers and drove down Burnside, dodging puddles and cyclists. I needed to hear it from her. I needed her to look me in the eye and tell me this was a mistake, some cruel twist of fate. The office building was all glass and sharp lines, with an artisan cafe downstairs that sold pistachio cookies for $5. I stumbled inside. The smell of espresso made me nauseous. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist, her smile practiced. I'm looking for Olivia Bennett. I'm her mother." The woman typed something, glanced at the screen, and then looked up with an odd glint in her eye. "She's in a meeting." I said I'd wait. I sat on a gray armchair, clutching my bag like a sinking boat. Across the lobby, a frosted glass door opened for a moment. I saw a flash of a navy blue blazer, hair tied back, posture of someone who learned early how to survive in cold rooms. My daughter. She was laughing with a man in a dark suit and burgundy tie, his hand holding a black folder. I recognized the logo, the bank that held our mortgage. Before I could stand up, the door closed again. And at that instant, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen, showing a photo of the same document I had in my bag and a short sentence that froze my blood. "If you want to know who really signed your name, come alone to the house at 10 p.m. Don't call the police." The message burned into my mind like fire. 10 p.m. The house. Don't call the police. For a moment, I just sat there, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. My thoughts ran wild. Who could have sent it? And what did they mean by, "Who really signed your name?" My mind was spinning. Between betrayal, fear, and the faintest glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, Olivia wasn't behind this. I stayed in that lobby for another 10 minutes, unable to move, staring at the glass door where I had last seen her. Then I stood up. I didn't want her to see me like that. Fragile, desperate, confused. I walked out, the cold air slapping my face again as I reached my car. My reflection on the window startled me. Pale skin, tired eyes, lips trembling. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The drive back home felt endless. The sky had turned almost black, heavy with clouds. The rain came down like thin needles, and each drop on the windshield felt like a countdown. My mind replayed everything. Olivia's first day of college, the graduation photo, the call she made last Christmas saying she couldn't make it home. Little pieces of distance that suddenly fit together, forming a puzzle I never wanted to solve. When I got home, the clock read 6:02. I had 4 hours. I didn't dare call anyone, not my sister in Eugene, not my old friend Carol from the church group. Something told me this had to stay quiet, at least for now. I made tea, but the water boiled over because I forgot to turn off the stove. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I went to my bedroom and opened the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were photo albums, birthday cards, and a small jewelry box where I kept the last gift my late husband, Daniel, had given me, a gold bracelet engraved with "Forever Us." I held it tight. Daniel had passed 5 years ago, and since then, everything had been about keeping our home, our memories alive. Maybe I had been so focused on preserving the past that I didn't see how the future was slipping away from me. By 9:45, the house was silent. I could hear the ticking of the clock echoing in the dark. I put on my coat again and slipped the envelope into my purse. My heart was pounding, a mix of fear and determination. Whoever sent that message knew too much, and if they had gone that far, they probably had a reason to meet me. At 9:58, I parked the car across the street, keeping the engine off. The house looked different at night, emptier, colder, like it no longer belonged to me. The porch light flickered once, then went out. I crossed the street slowly, the wet ground reflecting the dim glow of the street lamps. Every step sounded louder than it should. I reached the front door and hesitated. The key felt heavy in my hand. "You can do this," I whispered to myself, though my voice came out cracked. I turned the knob. The door creaked open, and the faint smell of coffee and rain filled the air. I stepped inside. The house was dark except for a single light coming from the kitchen, soft, yellow, almost inviting. My breath caught in my throat. There was someone there. I could see a shadow moving behind the glass door of the pantry. I took one step forward, then another, my pulse drumming in my ears. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. Then the shadow moved closer, slow, deliberate. I could hear footsteps now, one at a time, measured. The light flickered. And then, through the blur of fear, I saw a figure standing by the kitchen counter, face half hidden by the dim light. It wasn't Olivia, but I knew that face. And before I could speak, the person whispered my name, softly, almost tenderly. "Margaret, we need to talk." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. That voice, low, familiar, and impossible. The man stepped into the light. His hair was grayer, his face thinner, but there was no doubt. It was Daniel. My husband. My dead husband. I stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the counter. "You're not real," I whispered. "You're dead. I buried you." My words came out half-choked, half-sobbed. He raised both hands slowly. "I know how this looks, Margaret, but you have to listen to me before you call anyone. Please." My knees went weak. I gripped the counter just to stay upright. The air felt thick, unreal. I remembered that day, 5 years ago, the phone call from the hospital, the car crash, the closed casket. The endless nights crying into Olivia's hair while she said, "Mom, he's gone." "How?" was all I managed to say. Daniel sighed, looking down. "I didn't die that night. At least, not the way they said. There was an accident, yes, but I wasn't in that car alone. I was working with someone dangerous. And when things went wrong, they made it look like I was dead. Witness protection, new identity. I wasn't allowed to contact you or Olivia." I shook my head violently. No, you chose this. You chose to disappear. You let us mourn you." He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "I thought it would protect you. But now things have changed. That's why I sent the message. I found out they forged your signature. They're trying to take the house, Margaret, to finish what they started." My mind was a hurricane. None of it made sense. "They? Who's they? And why would Olivia—" "She's not part of it," he interrupted softly. "But the man she works for is. That law firm, the bank you saw today, they're laundering money. The house was under your name, but part of it was tied to my old account. They discovered it." I felt sick. "So, Olivia was just a pawn?" He nodded. "They used her to make it look legal. Told her you agreed to a financial transfer. She probably thought it was paperwork for refinancing. She doesn't know the truth." I couldn't stop shaking. "You should have told me," I whispered. "You should have trusted me." "I couldn't," he said. "They watch everything. Even now, coming here was a risk." I took a step back. "Then why come at all?" He hesitated, his eyes full of something between guilt and urgency. "Because they know you found the document, and they know you came here tonight. They'll come after you, Margaret. We have to leave. Now." Outside, thunder rolled across the dark sky, echoing through the walls. I felt like I was standing on a cliff's edge, torn between disbelief and instinct. "Leave?" I repeated. "Just walk away from everything? From my daughter?" "It's the only way to keep her safe," he said. "If you stay, they'll use her to get to you. Please, trust me one last time." I looked at him. This man who had died, who had returned, who was now asking me to abandon everything I had left. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Each sound was sharper, heavier, and then I heard it, a car pulling up outside. Headlights cut through the rain, sweeping across the curtains. Daniel froze. "Too late," he whispered. The doorknob turned, and a man's voice from the porch said calmly, "Mrs. Bennett, Portland PD, we need to ask you a few questions about your husband." My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might throw up. Police. They knew about Daniel, or they thought they did. Daniel's eyes went wide, his face pale under the kitchen light. "You can't let them in," he whispered. "If they know I'm alive, it's over. For both of us." I froze, torn between instinct and reason. "Daniel, they're the police. Maybe they can—" He grabbed my arm. "No, you don't understand. The people behind this own the police. The man on that porch isn't here to protect you. He's here to make sure I disappear again, permanently this time." The pounding on the door grew louder. "Mrs. Bennett, please open up." I could hear the metallic edge in his voice now, something rehearsed and cold. I looked at Daniel, at the man I had mourned, at the ghost standing in my kitchen, and every part of me screamed that this couldn't be real. And yet, his fear was real. His trembling hand on mine was real. "Go," I whispered. "Go to the back door. I'll buy you time." He hesitated. "Margaret." "Go," I hissed. He nodded once and slipped into the hallway, disappearing into the shadows. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I walked to the front door, each step heavy. The knocking stopped. I turned the lock halfway when a voice on the other side said, almost too calmly, "We know he's with you." I froze. The door handle rattled violently. Then silence. I peeked through the window. The cruiser's lights were off. 2 men stood on the porch, not wearing uniforms, just dark coats. One held a clipboard. The other had his hand near his jacket pocket, as if reaching for something. This wasn't the police. I backed away slowly, my breath coming fast and uneven. I grabbed my phone from the counter, ready to call 911, but then I remembered Daniel's words. They own the police. A loud crash came from the back of the house. My blood ran cold. "Daniel," I whispered. No answer. Then footsteps, not his. Heavy, fast, coming from the hallway. I ducked behind the kitchen island just as the back door burst open. 2 silhouettes stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the dark. I could hear them talking, their voices low and rough. "She's here." "The car's outside." I clutched my phone tighter, trying to stay quiet, every breath a betrayal. One of them kicked something. The wooden chair toppled with a crash. "Margaret!" a voice called, mocking, almost playful. "Come on now, we just want to talk." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. My hand hovered over the call button, torn between fear and reason. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in the doorway. Daniel. He held something metallic in his hand, his face set like stone. Without a word, he motioned for me to stay down. Then, everything happened at once. A shout, a flash, a deafening crack that echoed through the house. I covered my head, heart pounding, the world spinning around me. When I dared to lift my gaze again, one of the intruders was on the floor, motionless. The other had fled through the side door. Daniel was standing, chest heaving, the gun still shaking in his hand. I crawled toward him, my voice barely a whisper. "Daniel, what did you do?" He looked at me, eyes full of something dark and broken. "I did what I should have done 5 years ago." Outside, sirens began to wail. Faint at first, then closer, closer, until red and blue lights washed over the house. Daniel turned toward the back door again. "Margaret," he said, his voice trembling, "if they find me, you'll never see me again." He looked at me one last time, the same look he gave me the night before his death. Then he disappeared into the rain. And as I stood alone in that kitchen, the sirens closing in, one question tore through my chest, one I didn't know if I wanted answered. If Daniel didn't die that night, then who was buried in his grave? The sirens got louder, flashing through the windows like red lightning. I could hear doors slamming, radios crackling, voices shouting orders. My entire body was shaking. There was a dead man on my kitchen floor, blood pooling beneath him, and my husband, the man I'd mourned for 5 years, had vanished into the rain. When the pounding started again, this time it really was the police. I could hear the unmistakable tone of command, the sound of boots on the porch. "Mrs. Bennett, this is the Portland police. Step away from the weapon and come out with your hands up." Weapon. I looked at the gun lying near the counter. Daniel must have dropped it before escaping. I raised my hands and walked toward the door like a sleepwalker, everything around me blurred and hollow. They pulled me outside, handcuffed me, sat me on the curb. The rain soaked through my coat, but I couldn't feel it. Neighbors peeked from their porches, cameras glowed in the dark. Someone whispered, "That's the widow Bennett." Widow. The word felt like poison in my throat. At the station, they separated me from the noise. A gray room, a metal table, a mirror that wasn't really a mirror. A detective with tired eyes and coffee breath sat across from me. His name tag read, Miller. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, flipping open a folder. "We're going to need you to start from the beginning." I tried. I really did. But how do you explain to a stranger that your dead husband came back, killed a man in your kitchen, and vanished before the cops showed up? That you've been living inside a lie for half a decade? Every word sounded like insanity. "I'm not making this up," I whispered. "He was here. Daniel Bennett, my husband. He's alive." Detective Miller exchanged a glance with someone behind the glass. "Mrs. Bennett, your husband died in a car accident 5 years ago. The case is closed. His body was identified by dental records." I slammed my hands on the table, "Then explain this." I pulled the phone from my pocket, opened the message, the one with the photo of the forged document. But when I handed it to him, the message was gone. Deleted. No trace left. He frowned. "What message?" "I swear it was there," I said, voice cracking. "Someone sent it tonight. They told me to go to the house." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You've had a rough night, Mrs. Bennett. Maybe you saw someone who looked like your husband. Maybe you panicked. We'll have forensics handle the rest." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just stared at the table, numb. After what felt like hours, they released me. "Self-defense," they said, though the words barely registered. I drove home in silence, the city lights a blur through the rain. The house was sealed off with yellow tape, the kind that flutters in the wind like a cruel joke. I couldn't go inside, so I parked down the street and sat there until dawn. The world was quiet, except for the sound of my heartbeat, slow and aching, Then, around 6 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. "He's safe. Don't look for him. They're watching you now." My chest tightened. I looked around. Cars passing, a jogger, a newspaper boy. Ordinary things. But suddenly, everything felt staged. I was being watched. And then another message came in, seconds later. "You're not the only one they forged papers for. Check Daniel's grave." I read it 3 times before the meaning hit me like ice. I started the engine, hands trembling so badly I could barely turn the key. The cemetery was 20 minutes away, but my heart reached it long before my car did. By the time I parked at the gate, the sun had broken through the clouds, cold, pale light spreading over the wet grass. I walked fast, mud clinging to my shoes, until I saw the headstone. Daniel Bennett, beloved husband and father, 1974-2019. The flowers were still fresh. Someone had been here recently. And right there, under the edge of the stone, something glimmered. A small piece of metal sticking out of the earth. I knelt, brushing away the dirt. It was a key. A single, gold house key, identical to the one Daniel used to carry. And attached to it, a tag with one word engraved, "Basement." The key trembled between my fingers, cold as the November air. Basement. My breath caught. The house had an old storm cellar, a narrow wooden door half buried behind the garden shed. Daniel and I had sealed it years ago after a flood. I hadn't opened it since. I slipped the key into my pocket and looked around. The cemetery was empty except for crows picking at wet leaves. My heartbeat filled the silence. Whoever sent those messages was leading me somewhere. But why? And why now? Back in the car, I hesitated before starting the engine. The rational part of me screamed to drive to the police, to hand over the key, the messages, everything. But another part, deeper, older, whispered that I couldn't trust anyone. Not yet. Not after what I'd seen. When I pulled up in front of the house, the crime scene tape was still flapping in the wind. The police had cleared out hours ago. I parked down the block, keeping my head low. My hands were still shaking as I slipped through the backyard gate. The grass squished beneath my shoes. The shed loomed ahead, gray and rotting at the edges. Behind it, half hidden by vines and mud, was the cellar door. The padlock Daniel had put there years ago was rusted, but the key slid in perfectly, like it had been waiting for me. The lock clicked. A chill ran through me as I pulled the doors open. The hinges groaned, releasing a damp, earthy smell. I turned on my phone flashlight and started down the steps. The basement was smaller than I remembered. Low ceiling, concrete floor, the hum of distant pipes. My light swept across old boxes, paint cans, and something else. A wooden crate, new and clean, sitting in the middle of the floor. It had a label. Property of D. Bennett. My throat tightened. Daniel had left this here. Recently. I knelt beside it, heart hammering, and pried the lid open. Inside were papers, dozens of them. Bank statements, company contracts, envelopes stamped with official seals. I picked one up, and my hands went numb. It was the deed to my house, signed by names I didn't recognize. Not just mine, others. There were at least 10 deeds in that box, all linked to people in the neighborhood, all signed over within the last 2 years, all fraudulent. "This is bigger than us," I whispered. Then I saw a flash drive taped to the underside of the lid. I pulled it off, slipping it into my pocket. My flashlight flickered, the battery nearly dead. That's when I heard it. A soft click from upstairs. The sound of a door opening. My blood froze. Someone was in the house. I turned off the flashlight, holding my breath. The floorboards creaked above me, slow and deliberate. Whoever it was knew I was here. I backed toward the steps, each one creaking like a warning. I needed to escape, through the garden, through the fence, anywhere but up. But the cellar only had one way out. Another step above me, then another. The faint beam of a flashlight swept across the opening. "Margaret," a voice said, calm, controlled, male. "I told you not to look." I recognized that voice. It was the man I'd seen with Olivia at the law firm, the one in the burgundy tie. "Come out," he said. "You found something that doesn't belong to you." My mind raced. The box, the flash drive, Daniel, everything was connected, and this man was the center of it. He took another step closer, his shoes echoing on the wood. I reached behind me, my hand brushing against the cold metal handle of a shovel leaning against the wall. My pulse roared in my ears. He stopped halfway down the stairs. "Give me the drive, Margaret. I don't want to hurt you." I gripped the shovel tight, heart pounding. "Then you shouldn't have buried me with lies," I whispered, and swung. The sound was deafening. And as he fell backward, crashing onto the steps, my phone lit up again. A single message on the screen, glowing in the dark. "They're coming for Olivia next." The message burned into my vision like a wound. "They're coming for Olivia next." My breath caught. My daughter. The one person left I would still die for. The one person I thought I had already lost to betrayal. Now she was in danger because of me. Or because of Daniel. Maybe both. I climbed the basement steps, my legs shaking, the shovel still in my hand. The man in the burgundy tie lay sprawled halfway down, motionless. I didn't wait to check if he was breathing. My body moved on pure instinct. Fight, protect, survive. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the wet streets of Portland in shades of silver and gray. I ran to the car, hands trembling as I shoved the key into the ignition. My mind was a blur. Olivia's office, her apartment, anywhere she could be. I had to get to her first. Traffic was light. The city felt too calm, too normal for the chaos pulsing through my chest. I replayed the last time I saw her. The laughter with her boss, the way she didn't notice me standing there. I wanted to be angry, but all I could feel was fear. When I reached her apartment downtown, the front door was cracked open. That small detail, the lock broken, the door ajar, froze me before I even stepped inside. "Olivia?" My voice echoed through the hallway. No answer. The living room looked untouched at first, but then I noticed the spilled coffee cup, the chair knocked over, the faint smell of cologne that didn't belong to her. I rushed into the kitchen. Her phone was on the counter, screen cracked. And then I saw it. A single photo taped to the fridge. A picture of me, taken from outside my house, zoomed in through a window. Beneath it, written in red marker, "We warned you." My knees gave out. I grabbed the edge of the counter just to stay upright. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't have time to cry. I had to think, had to move. The flash drive in my pocket felt heavier by the second. Maybe it held what they were after. Maybe it held proof of everything. I plugged it into her laptop, praying it would turn on despite the cracked screen. A folder appeared. Project Ravenwood. Inside were spreadsheets, offshore transfers, coded messages, and, at the bottom, a video file. When I opened it, Daniel's face appeared on the screen. Alive, pale, tired. "Margaret," he said, looking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means they found me. Everything you need is on this drive. The names, the accounts, the evidence. They've used our house deeds to launder millions through fake foreclosures. I tried to stop it 5 years ago. That's why they wanted me gone." He paused, his eyes softening. "Tell Olivia the truth when it's safe. She doesn't know she's working for them. Protect her and forgive me." The video cut off. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I turned and froze. Olivia stood in the doorway, her face pale, eyes red. "Mom, what's happening?" Before I could answer, headlights flared outside. 2 black SUVs pulled up to the curb, doors slamming in unison. Men in suits poured out, weapons drawn. "Get away from the window," I shouted, grabbing her arm. She stumbled backward as the first shot shattered the glass. We dropped behind the couch, glass raining around us. "Mom, who are they?" she screamed. "The people your firm works for," I said, voice breaking. "The ones who killed your father." Olivia's breath hitched. "Dad? He's dead." "He's alive, honey. He's the reason we're still breathing." Outside, someone shouted an order. Boots pounded up the steps. I knew we had seconds, maybe less. I grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it inside my coat, and looked at my daughter, her face so much like mine when I was young, terrified, but fierce. "Listen to me," I said, gripping her shoulders. "No matter what happens, you run. You don't stop. Find Detective Miller. Show him this drive. Tell him everything." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "What about you?" I smiled. Small, broken, but real. "I'll find you, sweetheart. I promise." The door exploded open. I pushed Olivia toward the back hallway. "Go!" She ran. And as the men stormed in, as the world erupted again into chaos and gunfire, I felt one final thought rise above the noise, calm, certain, and fierce. If they wanted to bury the truth, they should have made sure I stayed dead too. The air was thick with gunpowder and fear. Each shot cracked through the apartment like thunder, glass shattering, walls splintering. I dove behind the couch, heart racing, the flash drive clutched so tightly in my hand it cut into my skin. Olivia was gone. Out the back door, I hoped. That was the only thought keeping me breathing. I crawled toward the hallway, trying to reach the fire escape, but the men were fast. Their boots hit the floor with military precision, voices low and commanding. I could feel them closing in. One of them kicked the couch aside, the barrel of his gun sweeping across the room. I froze, praying the darkness would hide me. Then a shot, loud, close, but not at me. The man jerked forward and fell. Behind him stood another figure, emerging from the smoke. My breath caught. Daniel. His face was bruised, his shirt soaked from the rain, but his eyes burned with that same fierce determination I'd fallen in love with decades ago. "You have the drive?" he shouted over the chaos. I nodded, too stunned to speak. "Good," he said, pulling me up. "Then let's end this." We ran toward the stairwell as more bullets tore through the walls. My lungs burned, my ears rang, but Daniel moved like a man with nothing left to lose. Outside, dawn was breaking again, the city slowly waking, unaware that its rot was finally coming to light. We reached the parking lot. Daniel yanked open a black sedan and slammed the door shut behind me. Tires screeched as he sped through the empty streets. "There's one last place," he said, gripping the wheel. "A man named Perez, FBI Internal Affairs. He's clean. I sent him a message days ago. If we can get him the drive, they'll have everything." "What about Olivia?" I gasped. "She's safe," he said, his voice steady. "I saw her slip through the alley. She'll find Miller. You did good, Margaret." We drove across the Willamette River, the city unfolding behind us. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the ache of everything we'd lost, the years stolen, the love twisted by secrets. But beneath it all, there was something else too, peace, a fragile, hard-earned peace. Daniel pulled into a quiet parking garage beneath a federal building. "Stay here," he said, reaching for the flash drive. "If anything goes wrong—" I stopped him. "No, we finish this together." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. Tired, proud, full of regret and love all at once. "Together," he whispered. We stepped into the elevator. The silence was deafening, just the soft hum of machinery and the faint sound of rain outside. My mind replayed every moment that had brought us here. The notice on the door, the forged signature, the lies. It all led to this. When the doors opened, 2 agents waited, one of them holding a badge. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett?" he asked. "Agent Perez. We've been expecting you." Daniel handed him the flash drive. "This has everything. The fake deeds, the laundering network, the bank connections. It's all here." Perez nodded. "We'll take it from here. You've done the right thing." For the first time in days, I felt my knees weaken with relief. I looked at Daniel, his hand in mine, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Maybe, after all the chaos, we could finally rest. But as Perez turned away, his partner, the one standing behind him, reached inside his jacket. I saw the movement too late. A single shot rang out. Daniel staggered, eyes wide, blood spreading across his chest. I screamed, catching him before he fell. Perez spun around, fired back, and the traitor dropped. "Daniel!" I cried, pressing my hands against the wound. Stay with me! He smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. You did it, Margaret. You stopped them. Tell Olivia I... The rest vanished in his breath. His eyes closed. The warmth left his hand. I don't remember how long I stayed there, holding him, sobbing against his shoulder while agents swarmed the room. Days later, they called it Operation Ravenwood. The story made national news. Fraud, corruption, police involvement, everything exposed. My name stayed out of the headlines, as promised. Olivia testified, brave and trembling, and when she looked at me from the stand, I saw forgiveness in her eyes. The house was gone, sold, reclaimed, cleaned of its ghosts. But I kept one thing, the gold key, now resting on a chain around my neck. Sometimes, late at night, I walk along the river and imagine Daniel beside me. I hear his voice in the wind, the echo of the man who loved me enough to die twice. And though the city keeps moving, cars rushing, lights flickering, I stand still and whisper into the quiet, we're free now. Because for the first time in years, I truly am.